Today we are talking about episode 401, America the Beautiful, written by Tony and Matt, directed by Julian Holmes. But I also noticed that in the credits that Matt was the second unit director on this episode. So I'm Courtney Williams. I produce Outlander Behind the Scenes. And interestingly, this discussion group started with episode 402. So we're kind of traveling back in time. This is a prequel. Kind of exciting. Since we're doing this later out of order, just that series 4 is based on Drums of Autumn. That's who I am. I'm a book fan and a show fan and a big fan of these three beautiful ladies and our discussion group. Tonight I am drinking water and Antoinette always looks hopeful. Sorry. And water with lemon.
I give
You're
up.
gonna have to take a break.
I give up.
Hello, I am Catherine Harmon Toomer. I am a family physician and a book reader and a show enthusiast, and I enjoy them both. And I'm not as, especially now, well versed enough in the books to remember what the adaptation, how it deviates. So I just enjoy them both. And I am a contributor to Blacklander Convos, and which is actually how I ended up here with who have now become my sisters or sister friends. And I am drinking a mango dragon fruit lemonade that I picked up on my way home.
Because... Did you try to match your shirt?
No, I did not try to match my shirt. This just happened to be one of my favorite colors. So, and we will be talking a little bit more about that.
Okay, all right.
My name is Carmen Schmidt, and I write the Outlander Anatomy blog. I started it in October of 2014. And I've written over 200 lessons on there and fun facts about the human body. And I like Outlander for many reasons, but one of the things that I like it most for is Diana's attention to science and medicine and anatomy. I enjoy all of those topics, and I really like to read her words about that. Also like to see the adaptations that are done by the TV series, especially about that, and I like to pick them apart. So bear with me if I do that. And I do love both the books and the TV show. Tonight I'm drinking my favorite, which is a German sparkling Pinot Gris. I know that doesn't sound possible, but it is, and it's really good.
I don't know enough about wine to know why that wouldn't sound possible.
Because you think a Pinot Gris would be French as opposed to German.
Oh, okay.
Is it my turn? My name is Antoinette. I am, what am I? I'm a criminal lawyer, formerly a defense lawyer. Now I'm a prosecutor trying to do some damage. I found Outlander in season 2 by accident. Thing kept popping up on Netflix, and I'm saying, oh God, not another one of these stupid historical romances that always gets the history wrong. And I was walking by, and it was a particular scene with Jamie and Claire when they were arguing about saving Jack Randall's life, and it caught me. And so I stopped to watch, and the rest, as they say, is history. And I then discovered the books after the TV show and fell in love with the books. Have read them now multiple times. I'm now listening to them on Audible. And it's in my car. It's in the house. So anyway, I'm just immersed in Outlander. One of the things I love about the Outlander world is that I have met some wonderful people through my involvement in Outlander. These three ladies are amongst the most wise, kind, thoughtful, erudite, compassionate people that I've ever met. And I'm so, so grateful for Outlander for bringing them into my life. And tonight, Carmi, I found a Prosecco. Well, you see, you can't see how much is left in the bottle, but
Looks like
needless
you've
to
been
say,
enjoying it.
oh, I have been
Yeah.
enjoying it immensely.
I like a Prosecco too.
So
It's really
I've
good.
been
Oh, that's my daughter's favorite.
Oh, I love the
finishing
bubbly.
my Prosecco. Yeah. Oh my God. There's hardly
It's a big glass.
I loved that uncorking though.
with my fancy cork.
Yes, your
Yes.
starfish.
Ganja,
Cheers.
ladies. Bottoms up.
Slanja.
So,
I'm sure.
So you guys, I had not watched this episode. I haven't rewatched any of season 4 ever. So I had not watched this episode since 2018. And I've had such bad marketing for season 4 in my head that I was pleasantly surprised. I actually liked this episode. There are some issues for sure, but overall, I thought it was a solid episode for the most part. I thought it was a good start to season 4. And Carmen, can you tell me what your star rating system? What is 1? What is 2? I know 5 is excellent, but what is?
Well, 1 would be poor.
Okay. Yeah.
And then 3 stars would be average, moderately good, I would say. And 4 would be quite good, but 5 would be off the charts for me.
Okay,
So that's kind of my range.
Okay, so I would give this a 3.5 stars based on Carmen's system. Yeah.
my overall impression was that, just like what you said, Courtney, it was a good start to the season. However, and let me put it this way. There's a lot of things that have been consistently good through all of the seasons of Outlander. And that's really also what made this episode enjoyable. However, also watching this, my overall impression was how much they've grown since this season, because if you compare the number ones to every season 6 and 401, 601 and 401 don't even compare. It's like you're watching 2 different TV shows. Mm-hmm. So my overall impression is very good. It held my attention. It was the first time I've actually watched it since watching it when it originally came out. And so, and I enjoyed it. I didn't have a lot of criticism, actually.
I thought it was a strong episode, and I had a similar response because I had gone back. I wrote a lesson on the medicine chest and also on Hayes hanging. So I went back and viewed those parts when I was writing the lesson, but I hadn't viewed the whole episode since I first watched it. And actually, I liked it better this time than the first time I saw it. And I would say I would rate it as a strong episode, and I would give it 4 stars, actually. I do agree with both of you. I think it was a strong beginning for season 4, and it certainly needs it. Sorry, I couldn't help that.
Ooh, the shade. Okay. Okay. I had not rewatched it. I find that the only seasons that I tend to rewatch are season 2 because it was my favorite season up to season 6, before season 6. But I liked the episode overall. I thought the strengths were strong, but the weaknesses were very glaring. But I don't think that the weaknesses overshadowed the episode to the extent where it was not good TV. I think it was still very good TV. I think the production values were still very high. I think some of the acting was stellar. And so for that reason, I would rate it. If we're gonna use Carmi's rating, I would rate it maybe a 3.2. Thereabouts. But I liked it overall.
Okay. Season 4 so far redeeming itself. Okay, let's go to favorite scenes, Catherine.
My favorite scene, not necessarily the most enjoyable scene, but my favorite scene was when Ian was triggered and had a PTSD reaction. I thought it was realistic. I thought it was well written. I thought it was well acted. And I think that the way that it was handled was it showed Jamie's emotional intelligence, which is something that is so prevalent in the books, that he just always seems to know what to say at the time. Mm-hmm. And especially with Ian, he's so good with him throughout the books. And I just loved that scene. That was my favorite.
I liked that scene too, and want to add that one of the things he did that was just perfect is going over and sitting next to Ian so that he's in Ian's space and Ian can relate to him. But my favorite actually was the scene where Jamie and Claire are undressing after dinner at the Lillingtons, and they're in there. I don't know if they're at a room at the Lillingtons or at an inn. It doesn't really specify. But they've just finished dinner and he's had his conversation with Tryon, and they're talking about it. But they do that so very well. They almost seem like you're looking in on a truly married couple, who have a great relationship with each other. The intimacy of their conversation and the ease with which they undress in front of each other, is just part of their life together. And the trust that takes to do that in your partner, I just was very touched by it. And I thought that they did it really wonderfully. And so it was so perfect that it really felt to me like I was in a room with a couple who had been married for 20 some odd years and were deeply in love with each other and trusted each other. And that's how it struck me. I just really enjoyed that scene. I liked the talk, the things that they were talking about seemed appropriate to discuss between them, and the insights that they had with each other. And I really enjoyed it.
That was also my favorite scene, and particularly the part where Jamie talks about making a difference in America because Brianna, it's going to be Brianna's country. Like there's something, he was so earnest and so sincere, and it was so sweet, and he looked so handsome in that scene.
Indeed.
He did. There was that little bit really kind of came alive for me. But I liked that scene really a lot too. And I liked the love scene between Jamie and Claire. It was obviously choreographed, but it was beautiful and artistic. I loved the lighting, and they're both so gorgeous to watch. It was like watching some art, and I don't remember if I was hormonally engaged, but I do. Parts of it, even though I knew it was choreographed, and like at the end he shifts her so that the camera can see her face, and I was aware of that. It just also felt honest also. So yeah, that was my second favorite.
Well, y'all stole all my favorites. I will never go last again.
We did our job.
Because my favorite was Jamie and Ian by the grave.
Mm-hmm.
And you know that line about your cock doesn't have a conscience, but you do. Classic Diana writing. She is such a bloody genius. But you know, I also like the scene in the inn where they sang for what's his face? What's his name?
Hayes. Gavin Hayes.
A
Yeah.
Carish, I don't know how they pronounce that. But there was just something and then everybody joined in. There was just something about that it felt genuine. And I really felt the sorrow for the loss of Hayes. You know, that was, I don't know why that scene touched me so, but it really did. So that was my second favorite.
It's interesting you should mention that scene because I wrote down cultural shift because it was very moving because it was as if they had brought a piece of home. They recreated a piece of home. But then I thought, you know, it was already someone's home. And so it's been shifting, you know, so it just seemed like they became part of the cultural fabric of you. And that was sort of an indication of that. I thought that was, and I was moved by that too. I thought it was pretty good. But my second was when they were on the boat and Claire assumed that, and I tried so hard to figure out what his name was, but it was like some strange
Euclestus or something.
Yes,
No,
that's what, yeah. It was like some Greek
Eutrocolis.
some Greek something or other. I figured it was like some obscure Greek deity. But when she assumed he was a slave and he said no, you know, he was free, and the story behind that and how that came to be. Because I liked that he had so much dignity. Even at the point where they wasn't clear that he wasn't a slave, he was very dignified. And I that scene sort of stuck out to me. And the relief on Claire's face when she was like, oh, thank goodness. Yeah. Because I think that's something which is very interesting. Because when they're at the table and they're being served by slaves, it's like there's no discomfort that's made obvious in that scene. However, she's uncomfortable when going down the river. And I don't know if it's because she was thinking with her medical mind also, and thinking, you know, this man should not be doing this for too long because it's, you know, it's physically difficult. So I'm not sure. So she was thinking, I guess, for the medical, physical rather than the psychological. But I just thought that was interesting.
Yeah.
I think maybe she didn't. If I could jump in here, they were hoping to sell that necklace. But she was on her best behavior. And that may be one reason why she didn't take on her hostess and host, you know, in that setting. Whereas she didn't have that kind of obligation when she was on the barge and she felt freer to speak her mind. Would be my thinking on it.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. I would agree.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That does.
Well, my second favorite, which was Courtney's, and that is the tent scene. And actually, it did become hormonal for me. And I was like, whoa.
Well, that's I can't remember. I watched it a few days ago, but maybe.
I completely was into it. I was just like, okay, I'm there. It's like, I thought it was extraordinarily well done and slow. It wasn't rushed. The timing was perfect. Those two actors have such trust in each other, and they have said that they do. Yeah. They're putting themselves in each other's care, and that shows in their performances, in my opinion. I just thought they did a beautiful job on it, and I agreed, Courtney. I loved the lighting and the setting and the choreography, and you know, they didn't have an intimacy coach at the time. Yeah. But it didn't seem to have been a problem in this instance. It was very convincing to me. I felt like it was a real, you know, the position isn't quite great when she's on top of him because that's anatomically not quite right. But I understand that. It was like, very close. It was very close.
It wasn't like Mark Costa.
Yeah. You know, if I can just piggyback off what you said,
Yeah.
One of my complaints about watching a lot of modern TV is that the sex scenes have now become obligatory. Everybody has to have their clothes off. It's just accepted that is what. And if you watch so many of them, they have an animalistic sort of feel to them, you know? And you can see that it is two people performing something that they are not really wanting to do. You know, a lot of it is very aggressive and animalistic. And what I have said in the past about Sam and Katrina is that they have such a chemistry that they don't need to perform. It is much more organic with them, and therefore it doesn't come across as animalistic and low, which is how I find a lot of modern sex scenes. And I think the intimacy coordinator was really brought on for the young'uns and not so much for them.
Agree.
Could be.
And I think that that was necessary for the young'uns, because in an interview, what's her name? Lauren Lyle said that she found the intimacy coach very, very helpful with the intimate scenes that she had to do with Cesar. So I think that was more for the young'uns than for Sam and Katrina, because you can't fake or you can't perform that kind of chemistry. It's either there or it's not.
Yeah.
And with them, it definitely is.
Yep.
Good point.
My next one was the end scene, in particular, the Ed Spilliers and Katrina, where she's gulping up the rings and he comes first when he screams at her, even though you can't hear, you can tell that is scary. Like he gets rage really quickly and really well. And then when he does that like mouth where he's looking at her body and, you know, and then he puts his finger in her mouth, that's a callback to Blackjack Randall putting his finger in Jenny's mouth. And it's just gross, especially like when you think about where that finger's been, and it's just nasty. I thought their interplay was really, really great.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like a happy scene, but it was well done.
Yeah. He's good at creating the essence of violation.
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
he
and
is.
we saw that come full force in later scenes.
Yeah.
I thought that Ed, when our first introduction to him as Bonnet he really got the character. This was before he became too much Captain Jack Sparrow later on down the line, but his duplicitousness and his just evil soul was just so well realized by Ed Spillers in this episode. Great performance.
Well, and his charm, in the beginning, his like little boy puppy, charm and smile and all that stuff. I thought he did a great job as Stephen Bonnet in this episode. Yeah,
I agree. I would say that was the most emotionally moving scene in the whole episode for me. I didn't react much to anything else until I got to that scene, and it was hard to watch.
Yeah.
Katrina did a great job projecting terror.
Oh God, yes.
And Sam projecting helplessness, which is very difficult for him to do given his size and given everything that we know about Jamie.
Yeah.
You could see he was just helpless. You could see guilt, helplessness, everything just all wrapped up.
My second favorite scene was when Jamie was with them in the wagon with Spillers, with Bonnet, and they're trying to convince the soldiers that it's venison that they have in there. And then the soldier goes up and pokes it with the bayonet. I said, oh my God. I just thought that was so funny because the episode, was so full of heavy moments that I found that little bit of comic relief, because even though I know what happened, I was still, oh my God, when he went to poke the venison. I don't know why.
I mean, he like stabbed that
Yeah,
thing.
yeah.
I don't know why I love that scene so much, but it just tickled me.
I'll just mention that I really enjoyed the scene where the medicine chest, chest scene, I thought was super touching and sweet.
Yeah.
And as well, the Jocasta scene where he's telling her about Jocasta on the riverboat.
That was funny too.
Yeah.
With all her dead husbands.
Yeah.
But he's dead too.
If I
Okay.
were Duncan Ennis, I would think twice before marrying Joe, honestly. She doesn't have a very good track record.
But he's not a Cameron. Maybe it's just a Cameron
That's
problem.
true. Maybe
Maybe she
he's
just-
a D, not a C. So maybe that
Maybe she just
takes
hates
care of the
Cameron.
issue.
Yeah, she's worse than Gayless. Okay. What worked for you, Catherine?
What worked for me was the pace. I felt that they gave enough attention to the death of Hayes to not make it seem disrespectful. I think that it was handled well. I felt that every aspect of the episode was handled very well, even right up to the end. What especially using Ray Charles's version of America at the end with all that was going on. Just no dialogue, only the music. That was genius. That was, it was gut-wrenching. And it's because all you saw were the facial expressions, the actions, the things that were happening while hearing this almost melancholy version of America. You could, Ray Charles, having grown up when he did and having the voice that he has, it was like his emotions were coming through in the music. And so that on top of what was happening was just, it was actually, I had to pause it at one point.
To me, it was like
if I don't stop, I'm going to start crying.
His rendition reminded me of a hymn.
Yeah.
To me, it was that solemn and that depth of feeling in it.
That was one of my topics for discussion. So let's just stop and do it here. What did you guys think of the choice to do the music over the ending scene, Carmen?
I thought it was fabulous. I know that there were some people who were offended by it, and I found that so deeply curious. I didn't understand that at all.
I did.
Because they said this is obviously a political statement. Some of them said, I read their tweets, and so forth. And I didn't take it that way. I didn't take it that way. I took it that this was a juxtaposition between the promise of America that they were talking about when they were out camping together and what was happening to them in that moment to dash those hopes and make it much more difficult for them to realize the American dream, which they had just discussed. And I think that is not uncommon for a lot of people in this country. And so I felt like it really resonated with me. And I just thought it was, I've never really paid, I'm sorry to say this, I've never really paid a lot of attention to that rendition. I've heard it before, but it didn't touch me the same way that it did this time. And I think it was because it was placed against the visual backdrop of this violence, this brutality, this wonderful song, that is one of our favorite American patriotic songs. And it was I just thought it was somebody said it, you might have been you, Courtney, but I think it was genius too. And I did not take it as a put down of America. I think it was being honest about the challenges that we face.
And you know what? And this is something you see a lot on Twitter. Political is used as a code word for racism or for racial. People won't just come right out and say it was racialized. They'll say it was politicized. And I always say, don't make this political. People often use that word when something racial is going on. Because I honestly believe if a different rendition had been used and it wasn't Ray Charles, if it had been Rascal Flatts or somebody else,
then there would
not have had much of a problem with it. The other is that I thought what it did though was set the stage to let us know this is a violent country. So all the stuff that happens to them from this point on is not unusual, because at this time when it was a brutal time in the world, everywhere, including America. And I think that was like, welcome to America. Sorry, you thought you were done because you survived Claudine, you survived a hurricane, you survived this. Guess what? Hello.
Yeah.
And that's what I saw it as.
She survived going through the stones 3 times. And that is not apparently a very easy thing, according to Diana.
No.
It's a very difficult thing. And, so they both faced her having to, leave him and have her baby in another century. Those are things that are, they are all faced things that were really hardships. And I think when they came to America, looking at her look on her face, after her endorphins, or she's floating in endorphins the next morning after the tent scene, I just think that they were just looking out and talking about, their dreams and what was going to happen. And then here at the days later, hours later even, they're confronted with the theft of all of their goods and of her beloved wedding ring and the killing of Leslie. It's all just, and if you notice that Eutroclus, is that what his name was?
Eutroclus, I think.
Eutroclus and the captain, they were being held at gunpoint. They were sleeping on the bank and they were held at gunpoint. They couldn't do anything. Jamie couldn't do anything. He was outnumbered.
Yep. Antoinette, what do you think about it?
Let me tell you, that scene and the choice to eliminate dialogue and use that song, I'm gonna echo everybody. I thought that was genius. I thought that the use of the song was deliberate and it was making a statement. And yes, I agree. I think it was political. I think America is romanticized a lot by people. And America is a violent country, was a violent country, is a violent country. And this is not some idyll that Jamie and Claire are embarked on. It would have seemed that way, floating down the beautiful river, reminiscing, giving and receiving of gifts. And I just thought that that was such a powerful way to end the episode. And it reminded me very much of the choice to use that Bob Dylan song in 304, with Jamie just riding away from his son and Claire on that plane. No dialogue after that last goodbye, just the song and their faces, And I thought that it gave the actors an opportunity to really show off their skills. Everybody in that scene, Claire, Kat especially, in her depiction of the absolute terror. And then you're seeing that, and then you're hearing America. Oh my God. That was just big up to them. That was excellent TV.
So I'm in agreement with you guys. I was surprised that people didn't like that. Quite honestly, I thought, what? Are you kidding? That was like the best. That was an incredible ending, and one of the best parts of the episode, and so much more powerful than if you'd been hearing, hey, give me that ring, and whatever, all that stuff. And what I thought is people, it was, we saw that in November of 2018. So I think people who had a problem with it were kind of in this place of, re-glamorizing America.
Yeah.
And this was kind of like, you're trying to say America's a bad place, and America's the greatest country in the world, and all that stuff. I think that was the political, what was being said about that. And to me, that's not in my mind, so I didn't go there.
I didn't either.
Yeah, so I thought it was brilliant. I thought it was a brilliant move and a very, very great way to end it.
These guys, a scene like that and a choice like that and how they pulled it off just makes me, realize how good these guys are at what they do. Yeah. And so it pisses me off when they get stuff wrong, because when they get stuff right, it is so right. How do they fall off the cliff in some of their decisions? I will never understand, because we're not dealing with an untalented bunch of hacks. These people know their shit.
Well,
I'm sure there are reasons for those. We just don't know what they are.
I have my guesses.
Down the rabbit hole, for instance.
No, season 4, Ron left midway through season 3 and handed the reins to Tony and Matt. My understanding is that the Tony and Matt didn't work out as the leaders, which is why we now have Matt. Everyone, Outlander was this steaming through, and they approved season 3 and 4 together, and then they gave them no break between those 2 seasons. So Matt got handed this new job of showrunner with no break in between the seasons. And they lost all their writers.
Yes, they did.
Yeah.
So
all the good ones.
That was a lot to become the leader, take on this new job, get all new writers, and never get a break, and then just keep producing. I think that's what happened to season 4, and also the studio. I think that might have been when Chris Albrecht left Stars, and the transition happened there.
I think it was pretty close to that time.
Yeah. So, and then they got super involved in what should be in, and we're going to lean in and all that stuff. So I think that's what happened to season 4. But let's go on to least favorite scenes. Catherine, did you have any?
My least favorite scene actually was, interestingly, when Fergus says that they want to stay because Marcelly's pregnant, and not because it was done badly, but just because it pissed me off that they didn't have more of him in season 4 because of what we're now seeing in season 6. I was like, it's such a waste of talent up until this season. And so I that was the only reason it was my worst favorite, because it just reminded me how much his talent was squandered for so long. And that's it.
Okay.
What?
He was very handsome in that scene.
He was.
Oh yeah, that's what I was like. It just made me angry. I was like, what the hell? You've got this really handsome, very talented person that you have not used at all.
I think he pissed somebody off early on.
I think he must have, but I'm glad he's back. But temporary. He was back temporarily. Anyway.
I know. I hope he's back. Okay, Carmen.
I have to say that I did not care for the scene of the indigenous people building the circle of stones and dancing. they had them like Stone Age people. It's 2000 BC. That's the end of the Stone Age. This is the beginning of the Bronze and later the Iron Age. So they just were too Hollywood, you know, with I think they were more articulate, intelligent than they were portraying them on the episode. So I really didn't care for that. And I thought maybe that's where Murtaugh's cairn is. It's in that, it's been moved to that stone circle. We should check that out. I also wanted to add that if you notice, it's on a riverbank where it's built. The river is nowhere to be seen 4,000 years later, which is not an issue because rivers move with time.
Did we see it again then in the episode?
Yeah, well, later we do when isn't that where, I assume that's where
It's in
Bree
North
and
Carolina, Bree and Roger.
yeah,
I don't remember.
unless there's a different one, you know, I don't
Mhm.
know, maybe there's more than that stone circle, but I assumed it was the one in North Carolina that they were talking about. But what I was going to say is that to me, what was not a problem, the fact that there wasn't a riverbank there later, if it's the same stone circle, because rivers change their courses over time, and 4,000 years would have permitted time for that to happen. So I wasn't bothered by that. But that was my least favorite, mostly because of the way that the people were portrayed. I think they were portrayed almost like they were Neanderthals. And I just thought that was time inappropriate.
What year were Neanderthals?
Oh, let's see. Did they start disappearing about 18,000 years ago? I think something like that. We still have their DNA mixed with ours. We know that.
Isn't that
But
crazy?
it is.
I just don't know
But,
that off the top of my head.
Yeah, I don't know it either, but I think it was not within the last 4,000 years.
Yeah, I was confused by that scene because it seemed like I couldn't tell if it was just the nature of them dancing, because then there were others who were upright and moving differently. So I just wasn't sure what they were trying to portray or what timing it was. I just
don't
seemed
know.
like
I just wasn't very happy with it.
yeah.
Kind of.
With the black
I
charcoal
was
around
confused
their
by
eyes.
that as well.
I that was one of my least favorite scenes also, because for the same reason, I think they were trying to create like a link between the circle, between the voiceover and the circle, and then the circle with the noose, which that worked for me.
Yeah, circle of life and death.
Yeah, when they showed the noose and everything after that. But the other thing is, I'm pretty sure they filmed that at the filming location of Kinloch Rannoch, where Craig Nadoon is. It looked like the exact filming location, the same place. And it just looked like they made the water higher. You know, they CGI'd in the water higher. So
well, maybe they did. I mean, there is the Rannoch Loch is right, very close. You can see it from the hill, Craig Nadoon, no problem.
Yeah,
I've been there, but there's no river running. It's a farmer's field.
yeah, exactly.
With sheep.
Yep. Okay, so my least favorite scene was anything on the riverboat. I loved the scenes on the riverboat because of the content of the scene, but the CGI was so bad on the riverboat that it was almost humorous. Like I listened to the podcast, and when they got to that place, I was wondering if they were going to say anything about it, because it was both the fake scenery going by in the background, and then also when they'd show it from the distance, and it was the literally CGI'd people moving around on the boat. It was so kludgy and kind of, I don't know, what's the word, sophomoric. That amateur, yeah. It seemed so amateur that if it were me, and I mean, I don't want to complain and whatever, but if I saw that, I would say, we got to reshoot this. We got to do something else. You guys have to be on horseback. This is really bad. Like, we cannot, we can't publish it like this. I don't know. Anyway.
I must have missed that. I don't know what I was focusing on because I completely missed that.
Can I make a comment right there? With when Claire climbs down after she's been, steering the boat, and she goes like this, and she says, "Wow, that current's much stronger than I thought." I didn't see any current at all. It was just looked like, to me, like the wind was blowing a few ripples in the water, but I saw no current whatsoever.
Yeah, it just, the whole thing didn't work. I mean, I liked, again, some of the exchanges, but the whatever you call it, the production values were.
Yeah, I'm still trying to figure out how did they go through that, because if you're going from the coast inland, how are they propelling themselves?
Well, that's what they were polling for, but they didn't poll right either. So the poll
sure weren't.
that I've seen done is that
it's more like lifting
and then they walk. As they walk again,
and then
it pushes the boat.
Because I couldn't figure out what he was doing.
You use your whole body, not just the upper body.
Yeah, that's how. But they couldn't walk into Sam and Cap's mark.
Exactly.
I mean, I just think the riverboat was probably a great idea on paper, but it didn't translate for me.
I did think the barge was cool, though. I thought it looked cool.
Yeah, and I don't know if you guys listened to the podcast because we had an extra day. I did, and Gary designed that. His team built it, so that's a real barge that they built.
Wow.
And that's probably part of why they wanted to use it, because it was beautiful. Yeah. But okay, Antoinette.
I'm going to piggyback off what you said in terms of the CGI, in terms of not necessarily a least favorite scene, but a least favorite aspect. No, I am prepared to suspend my disbelief. It's a show about time travel, after all. But the Fraser's Ridge Vista, when they're standing there looking out, it is so fake that I'm looking at myself and saying, really? Really? No. I mean, CGI is great. It's wonderful, but you gotta make it a little teeny bit more realistic, right? So that we can buy into it a little teeny bit.
Wasn't the Fraser's Ridge in another episode where they were looking at Fraser's Ridge?
No, man.
Well,
they go up
the camping place.
The camping place.
Yeah.
That's what
which was they went a really long way in that wagon from the town all the way up.
Yeah.
They hadn't reached the ridge at that point.
When they
but it's a ridge like kind of thing, I think.
Yeah, and they were looking out, and Claire was saying, thousands of trees and more trees, and Jamie was saying, paradise for some, but not for others, kind of thing. It's that vista I'm talking about.
Okay. Yeah. Which geographically was incorrect, but anyway.
Yes.
There's no way they could have traveled from the coast
Wilmington.
From Wilmington
to that view in North Carolina
with their wagon
and back
in that little bit of time. There's no
with their wagon, with their horses, drawn wagon. Yeah.
Those little things, because those things are my pet peeves.
Yeah.
When they don't pay attention to stuff and just expect us to just ignore it and just swan along with it. No, this audience does not ignore stuff like that. We have our little fine tooth combs looking at stuff. So if you're gonna do it right.
It does seem like there was a huge jump between season 4 and season 5 in terms of sophistication.
Yeah.
So I don't know if they looked and they said, okay,
we can't do this.
We were using these homemade, cutout stuff back here. We gotta increase the budget. Something, I don't know. Okay.
Don't you think it takes a team time to? I mean, they turned over a lot of people, so I think it's fair to understand that it takes a little time to figure out how you're going to work with each other. Not everybody was new, certainly, but a lot of the writers were new. And, and they had a new showrunners, and then that changed. But
and maybe post-production people. I don't know.
And I think it was also the increase of the number of discussion about the details of the show. I think so.
Oh, I like it.
I mean,
We're
really,
driving them to
no, I mean, I think
do
that
better.
if it's for fans and they know it, and they still have, even if they never admit it, they have their ear to the ground.
Sure.
Oh yeah.
What didn't work for me was the voiceover at the beginning. And I think maybe I was reacting to the same thing Carmen was reacting to in terms of the primitive behavior of those. But I felt like they were trying to make this profound statement. And it was just so simple. It was like, come on, it's so obvious. It's like, the circle of life and death. And and I'm like, okay, it's like Lion King moment. What? Like, it's like, I'm surprised they break out in song. No, it really didn't work for me. Yeah. I just felt like it was one of those spoon feeding moments.
I think if they'd started with the noose, that would have been a great place to start, with her voiceover about what she said about the noose, Carmen?
Yeah, I want to know, if we look at Claire watching Bonnet as he got out, after she was fixing his leg and they had their little chit chat and everything, she was distrustful of him. She thought there was something off about him. At least that's what I detect in her performance, that she didn't quite trust him. And I would like to know why Jamie's bullshit antenna wasn't up about Bonnet, because he seems completely taken off. He didn't suspect anything about him as much of anything. And usually he's extremely astute about people. And,
I think because he was more emotionally connected to the death of Hayes.
Could
and
be.
so he was reacting to the death.
The
fact that he thought this man was a friend of Hayes kind of vetted him a little bit.
Yeah.
And Claire had no connection to any of them. So for her, there was no emotional reason for her to trust him or anything.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think that I like that as an explanation for it, because it did strike me as being a little odd that Jamie, who's, he's as astute as it gets when it comes to human nature. And Claire is the one that usually runs off doing things at the spur of the moment and then thinks about it afterwards. But this time she was the one that I saw having her doubts about him. So that was one thing
and that is from the book, though, right? It is from the book. He does the exact same thing in the book, Jamie.
Yeah, but he doesn't. I think he has to do a little bit more convincing in the book. Bonnet does to Jamie. And I think Jamie's more skeptical of him in the book than he is in the episode.
Yeah, I think they underplayed
a big
that.
deal. It's
they
just
underplayed that a little bit.
Yeah.
Which dovetails straight into my next thing, which is my number 2 thing was Claire. And I really, I really was thinking about it. It wasn't necessarily the writing, it was the writing in some places, but it has to be some sort of directive that she had about, it's almost like they were like, you're strong women, you don't need no stinking men, and you're in this relationship. Like she looked like, and they also, I thought they made her look too old in this season. She looked much older than Jamie. And so the combination made her come across as like an old school marm who had just eaten a pickle, and was just like,
her hair wasn't especially flattering on the barge either.
Well, and it was inconsistent, because in some of the scenes she wasn't like that, but then in other ones, I also noticed, did you guys see that they had her positioned physically above Jamie in a lot of scenes? in the morning after scene, she's sitting up here and he's kind of, looking up. So it gives this feeling of sort of like she's the mother and he's the little kid. And that was true on the barge too. He was positioned below her. So it was like, it was also true of Claire and Stephen Bonnet. I just started paying attention. They had Claire always as the, higher person. And there were also just little lines thrown in where, when Jamie's saying to Leslie, yeah, I know we'll bury him after dark. We'll bury him. And then Claire's like, that's a good idea. It's almost like, well, we need to make sure Claire's involved. We can't have
Bless
the
you,
men.
my son.
Yeah, we can't have the men make these decisions. She has to give her a stamp of approval. So we'll give her this line. I found that a couple of times. And, like the scene where he says, I hate to deprive you of your bed. And she's like, I don't mind. But she looks like, I don't know. Claire is not humorless. If there's one thing about Claire, she always has a sense of humor in adversity. And this Claire, just, I don't know. She doesn't feel like this is book Claire. This does not feel like Claire to me. There were moments I glimpsed Claire, but then she would turn into that school marmy Claire, and it really distracts me and bothers me. Anyway, so
I did not like, what didn't work for me was the beginning, the whole situation with Hayes and how quickly Jamie, I don't remember if it was so quick in the books, how quickly Jamie capitulated and said, okay, fine. It was almost rushed.
yeah.
Hayes is saying, oh no, don't fight for me. And Jamie says, okay. It's like Jamie says, okay. And then he goes out and he tells them Hayes doesn't want it. But it's just that whole little sequence, everything in that sequence just felt off. None of the characters seemed like themselves to me in that sequence. I thought, Hayes is one of Jamie's Ardmere men. I didn't see any of the anguish. At the very, very end, as they were watching him hang, I did see some of that portrayed in Jamie's face, but I was a bit disappointed that there wasn't more of that shown. So that whole sequence, that whole Hayes sequence just felt off to me. Everybody seemed out of character. And
well,
I didn't like that.
Well, one of the things that was mentioned was that he had been fighting with the magistrate, I guess, for months trying to get him off. And so to me, then that means that there was a while. So basically going through all the phases of grief up to that point.
Yeah, and it was Claire that did that voiceover.
Yeah,
yes.
But I'm saying she said, but I'm saying as far as Jamie's concerned, and he's always been pragmatic about death though. Even with Claude and everything else. And it's like everybody has, I think at that point, it was like, well, the law has spoken and we'll just we'll give him whatever it is he wants, his last rites or whatever it is. I don't know. That didn't bother me too much.
And he also said, if you do this, you're going to risk your neck and your whole family. And Jamie's like in a new country. He's, he may be less willing to do that. Possibly. I don't know.
Yeah, it didn't strike me as anything. But then, that whole, at that point, we're still, they're still talking about life and death in circles. It's that way. So
I actually liked the that sequence.
Yeah.
With Hayes.
No, I didn't like it.
Didn't work for you.
This fell off to me.
I thought it was odd that in the tent scene, that the last we see of Jamie and Claire is their lovemaking. And then we see her sitting up out of bed, totally dressed. She's even her neck scarf is tucked in, and he's totally dressed, and the animals have their tack on. The horses, did they leave him that way all night? Or did they get up and then they took a nap? I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
think
I thought
something got cut there. don't you?
yeah, I kind of
He even had his boots on.
Yeah, yes, he did. He had his boots on. They were fully dressed.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that maybe that's the case, that something got cut there that we missed.
Yeah.
And that also, I can say, I felt was true when all of a sudden they switched to Lillingtons. And there isn't any lead in. I didn't hear any lead into having dinner at Lillingtons, where they're, she's dressing and he has the
There was a
Yeah,
voice.
there
There was a voiceover. She said
she
something.
said we're
about,
getting ready for Lillingtons, but
the
how did they get
Lillingtons dinner.
invited there?
oh,
And by the
Yeah.
way, was a mix up in her books between Lily White and Lillington. So I don't know what Lillington they're talking about, because Lily White is the magistrate that Rogers kills with a sword through his eye, if you
Mhm.
remember right. And
Mhm.
but later, in some later books, Roger refers to killing Lillington, not Lily White.
oh,
And I
really?
don't know whether, I don't know whether or not they don't know that when they wrote this. They mean this is to be the same one that Roger killed, or is it a different character? I was curious about that, but she just says in the voiceover, we were invited to Lillington's for
Yeah.
dinner tonight. But
Mhm.
how did they get the invitation?
Yeah. How
They
did
came in
end
on a
up?
wagon with no.
Yeah. How did they end up being at the table with the governor, who is like the number one
Right.
person of the state,
Yeah,
Yeah.
interesting.
and at his
I-
right,
Well,
which
they
means that he
clearly
was like the guest of
wanted.
honor.
They clearly wanted him there because they wanted to make this.
Yes,
offer.
but that was
Proposition,
one
this
where I think they
proposal.
left something out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Courtney.
Yeah,
Because
I
he
think
was also
there's
at the
something was
governor's
cut.
right,
yes,
which is a
probably so.
significant place
Yes.
to seat somebody.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yes.
And so he was considered the guest of honor. So, but
Hmm.
why?
Why? That's a good question.
Well,
Well, I
of
think
course we know
because-
later why,
yeah.
but what we don't know is, and what wasn't shared is, how did the Governor Tryon find out about Jamie?
Right.
Mhm.
Because at the table they say, I understand that you're the nephew of Jocasta
Jocasta.
Cameron. And then the governor says, yes, we went through Cross Creek, Cross Creek. Yeah. And
Well, maybe
and,
that's the explanation.
Yeah, maybe they.
My
find-
nephew is there, show him some hospitality, and she's like one of the wealthiest in the state. So
Yeah,
Mhm.
and they would know all this stuff because of the letter writing and it takes them so long to get there. But you're right, Carmen. We didn't
But
see
I-
it. We have to.
I would have liked to. I felt that could have improved the flow of the story if we had known how that
Mhm.
invitation came about, even if it was just a couple of sentences.
Yeah,
I would have
I
felt
agree.
like it wasn't just dropped in there.
Makes
Yeah.
sense. Makes sense.
Okay, that's it.
That the scene with Claire and Jamie the morning after is a weird scene in my mind. And one of the reasons is because in the book, Claire is extremely British. She's not, that was the most alive and excited that she looked the whole time, was talking about America and its future and the American dream. And that just didn't feel like something that British Claire would be doing to me.
Well, remember that British Claire had just spent 20 odd years living in Boston with what's his face, and she wanted
Right.
her daughter to be Americanized and all of that stuff. So
Well, she
No.
wanted to be.
she wanted to be
become a
an
citizen.
American.
Yeah.
Well, in the
Because remember that
show,
she
did she
said
in the
was-
book?
Yeah.
I don't
In
remember
the
that.
books, because she,
Oh.
I think so too.
Hmm.
No. I don't know if she actually said she wanted to be an American in the books, but it does come across that she regarded America as her home because she traveled so much with Uncle Lam when she was a child that she didn't really regard England as home.
Oh,
Do you see what I
maybe,
mean?
True.
So,
maybe,
so
yeah.
that's why, you
Okay,
know, Jamie
I'll buy that.
and wherever he is became her home.
Well, I could see her being excited thinking about them in this place. But it
Mhm.
just seemed like a very patriotic speech for Claire to be giving to me.
Well, she
Yeah.
was an American by that time, isn't it? Bostonian,
Yeah.
surgeon at the hospital, blah, blah, blah.
So my only other one was, did it work for you guys? Did you think it worked for Stephen Bonnet to go into his fear of drowning for Claire in the wagon? I thought that was a weird
Nope,
choice.
nope.
Mm-mm.
Yeah.
He says that to Bree in the books, and it's
Yeah,
not
after
there.
he's had sex with her and after he's had a nightmare, so he's very vulnerable and he's confused. It's
Yeah.
the middle of the night. I mean, for him to just kind of segue into that.
Yeah. You know, I have a dream about drowning. The hell? He
Yeah.
doesn't know this woman. And, you know, she's not his doctor. She doesn't have a thing on her forehead say, you can confide in me. I'm a doctor, you know.
You know,
I
in
just-
the podcast, they said that was his way of trying to find a way. He was trying to find a way into her psyche. And he was like, okay, she's a doctor, so I could, if I
Bullshit.
try to establish something, like, have you ever felt the sea pulling at me? Well, how would he know? I don't know.
Yeah, my thing is
it's a
this: he was too
stretch.
much of a misogynist to see her as a doctor anyway.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway. Okay, let's go to things I noticed. Catherine?
The things I noticed was because I had forgotten that Marcelly was pregnant, and because I hadn't remembered that from when I first watched it. And so when she said I'm tired, my first thought was, ooh, early pregnancy, you know. So, and it turns out, yeah, she was pregnant. So I did notice that. The other thing I noticed were the walls in the tavern. They had this beautiful green, but that smoky blue wall, charcoal blue, depending on how you looked at it, in the bedroom where Claire and Jamie were. That was the most beautiful color. Oh my gosh, that was beautiful.
It was pretty.
Every time I watch Outlander, I feel like painting a room in my house. And I think I'm gonna have like Outlander colors. I mean, seriously, that is. I would decorate a whole room around that color alone. It is such a beautiful color. In fact, I probably will. I'll keep you posted. And it's like sometimes you look at it, look like it was like a dark gray. Other times it was like a deep blue. Other times it was just so beautiful. And I love that about they use glazes. And that's why, depending on the lighting and the angle, it changes the color. But that was just beautiful. The other thing I noticed were the sets. The sets were just so incredibly done. And the mud. It's like every time I see it, I'm just like, oh, how messy must it have been. That mud on the, it's just muddy. And I always noticed that. It just seemed like would have been very uncomfortable and very dirty. Can you imagine those long skirts always being dragging through them?
Yeah.
Ugh.
Yeah.
How do you keep them clean?
You don't.
You don't.
And dry, Anyway, so that's what I noticed.
Okay, so the scene where they're getting undressed in the bedroom scene. Claire is wearing the corset that she made in the 20th century. It has those straps, that are the from a garter belt. I don't know if you've seen those, but they're the little hooks on it. You look at it and you'll see it. But that's the one that she made back when she was in Boston before she came back to Jamie. It's what she had on when she came back to him.
And it survived the shipwreck in the chest of clothes.
Apparently. Or maybe she was wearing it underneath her bat suit because, she still had on her bat suit.
Oh, yeah, probably she was. Yeah.
So that's one of the things that I noticed. Another thing that I noticed, speaking of environments, Kathy, did you see the surround on the fireplace where in the room where Jamie and
the governor, yes,
oh,
the faces
Lord.
that were
that was
going
beautiful.
around. Yeah, the plaster.
It was just gorgeous.
Yeah, I noticed that too.
It was really impressive. It's not my personal taste, but I can't help but be moved by the beauty of that setting.
Well, I did notice how small the actual fireplace was in comparison to that.
Yeah,
It
that
just seemed like a
huge
little place. I was like,
surround
if you
and
have
this
that
little
big old,
tiny
why not have a
firebox.
big area of fire? But
This
anyway.
is true. This is true. I was wondering if you guys noticed the nuance of when Jamie was telling Ian, your parents want you to be a man of learning and influence, a man of worth. And that was the setup for the coming episode of Man of Worth. I thought that was fun to see that. I thought that Governor Tryon really made himself comfortable in the home of Lillingtons. Well, let's have a pipe and some brandy in the drawing room afterwards with someone else's home. But I guess if you're
But he's
governor,
Governor Tryon. He's
right,
he's
exactly.
the
Title.
ship.
Yeah. When they're on the barge sleeping, Jamie is on his side toward Claire, and Claire is laying on her back. And that's just the opposite of the way they sleep in the books.
Mhm.
Jamie sleeps on his back with his hands folded across his chest like a sarcophagus. And she sleeps on her side. And
Oh,
they
yeah.
split them
Switched it.
because of the very thing I think you were talking about earlier, Courtney, and that is that they're trying to make her be the
man.
man. Yeah.
Well, she's
And then he mentions the regulators. That's the first time that we hear about the regulators that are going to plague everybody for a
I
long
thought of
time.
Antoinette when they said that. I was like, oh boy. Here we
come
go.
the damn regulators.
I don't know if you saw the tweet from a man whose ancestors were a part of the regulators of that county that Brownsville is in. And
No.
he was pretty upset about it. He tweeted and he said he wasn't very happy because his family had belonged to those regulators, and they didn't portray them very nicely in the in the different
in the show.
in the show.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I had some things I noticed. Did you guys notice that Jamie saw Bonnet get away?
Mm-mm.
He was in the crowd.
Oh yeah. He did.
Yeah, he does. He watches him
Yeah.
do that. Yeah.
As did the rest of the crew minus Leslie. I noticed that young Ian looks like an absolute baby in this
Mhm.
episode.
Yeah.
And I noticed that Claire rode up on the Beardsley's horse. Did you guys notice that when Jamie and young Ian were digging the grave, that they dug a really big hole, but there weren't a lot of dirt piles around the edges?
Well,
For
because
the
they couldn't
amount
have
of
it too
soil
high,
that-
it would have covered up their faces during the dialogue.
And they wouldn't have been
Exactly.
able to get to the
Because the thing is, if it was 6 feet deep and
Yeah.
he's 6'4", his head should have only been like 3 or 4 inches above the.
Just barely his eyes.
Yeah.
yeah, so they didn't have any piles, and they were. I thought for sure, Carmen, you would get that one. I want to know what happened to the other 2 horses during Gavin raising from the dead scene. Claire was holding the horses, and then in the next scenes, they're just all standing around. There, you can see one in one of the scenes, but then they're just gone. So
They went to get coffee.
yeah. Did anybody notice that Tim Downey has really big calves?
He does. I've noticed that before.
I mean, wow. Especially
Yes.
sitting next to Sam, who had on
He's got little skinny
boots.
calves though.
He does, but he had on boots, and Tim's were still way bigger in his little white hose. Okay.
Of course, white makes it look bigger, but no, he does have muscular calves.
Yeah.
Makes me wonder if he runs.
That's what I was wondering if he's a
Did
runner.
you guys know that? Did you notice that when it was young Ian's turn at the pole, he left his food sitting there for Rolo? And Rolo's looking at it like,
Mm.
But,
I didn't notice.
I noticed that too.
Let's see. And the last one is I noticed at the end of the fight on the riverboat that Jamie's wig looks like a Q-tip that's been carried around in someone's pocket for about 2 weeks.
Oh, that goddamn wig.
That wig. He's like, anyway.
Oh, God.
That's great.
Okay, let's do medical and anatomical, Catherine.
So, I already talked a little bit about the PTSD. They're really, really, really good about portraying that. That's something they've done consistently all the way through. Just really good with the psychological traumas, and the triggers and the counseling and all the things that go along with it. The things I noticed is with the hanging, I couldn't figure out whether they were trying to suggest that he was strangled or his neck snapped. I was like, which was it? Because his eyes suggested that it was a strangulation, but his body suggested that it was an immediate snap, that he just jerked once and he was gone. So I'm like, which is it? Because it would have taken about 4 minutes, would it have been a strangulation, but it would seem too immediate. So I was like, which were they trying to say it was? The other was when they stabbed through, I couldn't figure out what they were suggesting, that it hit just the very tip of it hit his leg, that it went through mostly the meat,
Venison leg.
venison. And then it was like, but it showed blood on it. And it was like, wouldn't that have shown up on the knife? I mean, I didn't figure out what they were trying to show there either. And really, those were the only two things I could think of, or the three, including the PTSD. And I'm sure, Carmen, you came up with a whole lot more. So I'm just going to let you take it from here. Well, and she's an anatomist. I mean, to be honest, and I'm just going to tell you, I mean, medical is nice, but it's still applied, information.
It's
Whereas
applied.
With anatomy, though, it is the foundation of everything in medicine. So
yes, it is.
So when you are a anatomist, no, seriously, I mean, it's like you really, it's like, it's the superior knowledge of medicine, because that's where we all come, that it's the foundation of it. And so, medical is anatomical. I like going before you because I feel like I'm just like my knowledge is nowhere near what yours is when it comes to the human body and how it works.
Well, now wait, when it comes to treatment, you'll have it.
No, that's treatment, but I'm saying, but we don't talk much about treatment, because Claire, in those days, the treatments that I use now are not available then.
True.
Or when we do talk about treatment, I feel comfortable, but when it comes to most of what we talk about now, it's mostly anatomical, really.
Yeah. So I want to comment on the hanging too, because I wrote a really long lesson on hanging, which I've given the link to Courtney. I hope she'll post it. But what they did was they did what's called a long drop hanging. Now there's three different kinds of hanging where there's a rope. There's a short drop, there's a standard, and there's a long. And they did either a standard or a long. It didn't really show it that well, but I'm pretty sure he was up there pretty high. And a long drop would be 6 feet, something like that. So it should have snapped his neck. And if it snapped his neck, he wouldn't have had the flushed face. He would not have had the petechiae in his eyes. And then he had the subconjunctival hemorrhage too, especially in I think it was his left eye on our right. But he had a continuous bleeding in that area. And then in other spots, it was just spotty. So those would be the petechiae. And then where it was just this flood of blood, that would be the subconjunctival hemorrhage. And that is seen with strangulation, like you were saying before. And that's what a short drop does. So they'll lose consciousness within about 15 seconds, but then what I've read is anywhere from 10 to 20 minutes, they can survive. If their neck is broken, then their face is actually quite white. It goes red because the blood flowing from the brain is occluded, and then it makes the face red and puffy like his was. So what they were showing was a strangulation effect and not a long drop. And they meant for his neck to break. And that's what his feet twitching suggested, that it was a long drop, but that's not consistent with the face that they showed. Now that's interesting for me about science, but I don't know that everybody would be interested in those nuances, but I find them fascinating.
Would it have been difficult to portray a broken neck, though? More difficult to portray that?
Mm-mm.
I don't think so.
You just
No.
it would have just
You
been
can
like
do
a
your
thud.
neck.
You just like drop and
Yeah.
you're still and you just
then
you
he's just
like
lying there with the-
you're just kind of twisting
Yeah.
a little bit. But usually with the snap, it's just you just drop.
Yeah.
But the rope's still holding the head up, so it's just they just kind of swing.
Oh, gross.
Well, that's true. That's true. But one of the things that they make a mistake on is that the hangman good ones would put the knot underneath the chin. And when that caused the neck to snap back and break off the odontoid process and drive it up into the brainstem, which resulted in immediate death. But in movies, you'll often see the knot on
Off
the
to
side. That's not that's not as good for a long drop and an instant death. If they somehow did a standard or a short drop, then they would run up and take a hold of the legs and pull on them often in order to give a person a quicker death. I believe Lord John did that with somebody, although I'm not remembering who, in one of the small books, one of the novellas. But that was done quite often. I also want to comment on the medicine chest because that actually was really well done. I know that they had a company make the medicine chest that Jamie gives to Claire, but they fashioned it after an 18th century medicine chest, and they were very common, actually, not to that much beauty and detail, but most every home had a medicine chest in those days where they would keep, it was like our what we call our chest, our shelves in the bathroom.
Medicine cabinet.
Medicine cabinet, yeah, but it was portable and had probably more medicaments in it than what we might think of and larger things because they did so much herbal medicine. But there was an ivory syringe in there, and that was consistent with the time. They were made out of ivory very frequently. And then there was a cup, a point made out of ivory too, a funnel that looked like it might have fit on it. There were knives, there were scalpels, there were probes, there were tenacula and
Microscope,
a bone saw, her beautiful microscope, and that was consistent with the 18th century too. It probably was a real one, actually, is what I think. I don't think that was a model. I thought the special effects people really went out of their way to make it consistent with what was described in the book and what was consistent for the time. The sort of things that she would have. They had a amputation knife in there. That's a curved one with a curved blade that looks so horrible. But it was in there. They didn't have a fleam that I saw. I would have expected to have been in there, but I didn't see one in the chest. Then the other thing that I agree with Kathy about the PTSD, I thought it was well done, and I thought Jamie coming and sitting in the space next to Ian was brilliant, because that is how you can get in touch with a person when they're in that kind of distress, is to go into their space with them and let them know they're not alone. But the one thing that I didn't think was very well done was Leslie's throat cut. I did not think it was, it looked like he really cut. It was just too easy to instantly.
and there was no
kill him.
spray. If he had killed him that
there was
fast,
no spray.
there would have been it would have hit his carotid, and there would have been spray. Like that's like one of the
because it's under pressure.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree. So those are there wasn't a lot of medicine or an anatomy, but there was a fair amount. And I also wrote a lesson on the medicine chest too. If anybody wants to look those up at my website, you can read what I had to say about those two in greater detail.
I'll post those with the post.
Thank you.
I have a medical question. Why are young Ian's lips so red and juicy?
Because he's young and juicy.
I mean, they don't look like that later. I just noticed his lips a lot, and I don't remember them looking like that in later, like in season 6. I thought
you
maybe
can
it was
make
just
lips
about.
look a lot
I
very
think it
full
has to
with
do with
makeup.
maturation.
Yeah, I thought it was
and-
maybe because, you know, I'll save this for the BTS, but he was only 19 when they filmed this.
Okay.
19 and
That's
or
what I
he was
said.
re-
that
I
was my
think he
first
was-
comment. He was young and juicy. That's why.
Yeah, I think it had to do with his age.
Yeah.
I think he had a baby face, you know, a bit of a baby
There you
face
go.
when he filmed that year and the year before.
Yeah,
But now he's a man,
yeah,
you know, and his face has changed.
Mhm.
very much. I just thought it was interesting. Like maybe he was still pubescent, you know, with those lips or something at that
Yeah.
stage.
Courtney, he was young and juicy.
That was the medical term, young and juicy.
He was young
Okay,
and juicy. Yes. that is technically-
Lawyerly. What? Are they allowed to just hang old Hayes there?
Trial, didn't he? Yeah,
He
he
did?
had a trial, yeah.
Mhm.
And he admitted to killing the man.
Oh, okay.
Well,
they didn't
There was a
accident.
magistrate.
It was an
There
There was a
accident, but-
magistrate.
There's mention of a magistrate.
Yeah, that's
and they
right.
showed
But-
him
Yeah,
Okay.
they showed the magistrate. I don't remember that.
marching behind when Claire was talking about him. They showed
Oh,
him
okay,
in
okay.
the over.
Oh,
They showed it.
okay.
Ah, the voiceover.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, he confessed. It was not an accident.
Apart from the
Okay.
fact that he was already breaking the law because she was married,
Exactly so. Exactly so.
but he
What
said
if-
he didn't
Oh.
know. So
What about the Stephen
Well, that's the
Bonnet?
problem.
Well, he said he did know.
no, he said he
that you
didn't
were-
know she was married.
Didn't know
thought.
until the
Until
husband
her husband
until
showed
the
up
husband showed
upon
up.
him with a pitchfork.
And apparently Jamie
thought
tried to
he
talk
said-
him out of it.
Jamie tried to talk him out of going with the woman because she was married, I thought.
No, I
No?
thought it was
Did
just
I
he thought it
miss
was a
that?
bad idea.
Yeah,
He didn't know she was married
He didn't
until
know
the
she was
husband
married
showed up
until the
trying to kill
husband
him.
showed up.
Okay.
trying to
That's
kill
what he
him.
said.
I
that's what he
guess I
said.
assumed that was the reason Jamie would say it.
Oh,
But
or maybe he
that-
just kind of just like, not a good
Well,
idea.
I mean, Jamie has always been telling them to be careful about carousing with women, even
in Scotland.
in
All
season
of them,
3.
he
Yeah.
does that.
Mhm.
That's true.
Yeah,
he tells
he
them
does
that
that.
all the time. They'll
okay.
get
What
the
about
cops.
Stephen Bonnet? What he did on the riverboat?
What you mean?
I
What you
mean, is that
He's a
illegal?
kind of-
sociopath.
Yes,
What?
Courtney, that's very illegal.
No, I said he's a sociopath. So
Yes, very illegal. I mean, there's theft there, there's aggravated assault there, there's murder. Yeah.
and then let's not
Bloody-
forget
Moida.
Tryan's line.
Who?
There's the law and then there's what is done.
What is done.
Yeah,
Yeah.
especially in America, early America.
Yeah, exactly. So, because just like now, there are two systems of justice, one for the rich and one for the poor. If
Yes, it
Hayes
is.
had been a wealthy man, bet your bottom dollar he would not have ended up hanged. There would have been some kind of accommodation made, or he would have been broken out and run off
Yeah.
and not face the consequence that a
Mhm.
poor man would face.
Yeah.
There's always been that double standard.
Always.
Yeah.
And I missed one
In
of my
every
medicals,
country, actually.
Mhm.
by the way.
Yeah.
Oh,
in
well, I
every
was going to ask you, is he a sociopath or a psychopath? Is that your medical, the
He's
other
the
one?
I think he's
Sociopath.
sociopath. He's not a
Sociopath.
psychopath.
No.
He knows he's doing wrong.
Yeah.
He just doesn't care.
He has no empathy.
A psychopath has no
None at
sense of
all.
reality. He
Yeah.
knows
Yeah.
what he's doing,
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
and he just doesn't care at all. He has
Yeah,
no
he doesn't
conscience.
care.
He has no empathy, no conscience, no nothing.
Nothing. They're
He's a
much more
sociopath.
dangerous.
Yeah. I did forget one of my medical. I saw it on my list here.
What was it?
About Ian talking about his rape.
Mhm.
Something that you hear often, there's this misconception that men can't be raped because unless it's penetration, like, unless it's sodomy.
Anal rape.
Yeah. But
Mhm.
that somehow if a man is erect, then therefore it's not rape because he's responding. And one of the things that was mentioned in here was simply that there's an involuntary reaction, and you can't do anything about it. And even Jamie says, your cock has, doesn't have a conscience, but you
do. Yeah.
And so that I thought that was very interesting, that they not only talked about it, that it is just as traumatic as if it for women, if something's done to you, don't want done. And what's worse is that it's sometimes even worse because there's pleasure involved. And
like
there's a
messes you up
psychological
there.
violation, a physical violation, but unfortunately there's also something happening that actually can feel good. And that combination can actually really mess with people. I mean, it's just really, and not only that, societally, people expect women, unfortunately, expect women to to be raped, and they expect to see trauma, but they don't expect men. And so often what happens is they're like, get over, I mean, usually the attitude is that, what, why, you had sex. No, you didn't.
Yeah. Well, and it's the same thing that happened to Jamie, and when he was
Blackjack.
stimulated and he ended up getting into it and then realizing afterward, like, talk about psychological torture.
Yeah. Well, and then, but even in his case, there was still some pain involved, so he could probably latch onto that some and have that understood. But with Ian, there was nothing painful. It was all psychological warfare, basically. And I thought that was very well described.
Well, Jamie describes himself as being taken apart, basically, by that experience, that he had a little lean-to finally with Claire, but that he needed to build on that. But it really did undermine his whole sense of self.
Yeah, didn't he say he felt like he was hiding under a blade of grass or something?
Yes.
Yeah.
But even in his case, they showed blood. They showed it was still, sodomy. There were still other things involved, so that there was burning. There was other, violence involved. And so so that trauma afterwards was very consistent, and it was better understood. I think what's lesser understood is the involuntary reaction that men can have while being violated.
Oh, that makes me
sad.
And
Ian, they said that it was very well written.
It was.
And it was not minimized at all. And I thought
well
that
acted
was,
and well acted.
And I thought that was very
that's one of the things that Outlander does well. Doesn't shy away from these kinds of tough topics. And usually when they tackle them, they do it so very, very well.
Yeah. However, I have to say though, there's a lot of rape, but there was also a lot of rape in that time period. People were not as.
And listen, Kathy, there's a lot of rape in
now.
This time period too.
Yeah.
And 80% of rapes go unreported.
Reported. Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying? There is a lot of rape.
Yeah.
And a lot of it is date rape and acquaintance rape, which is why so much of it goes unreported. So it's not that, when people talk about the book, there's too much rape in the books. Hello. The books are a reflection of one, the time, and one, the reality of vulnerable people. Whether male or female, there will be predators who will prey on vulnerable people, whatever time period. And unless you're going to be, if you're writing historical fiction, unless you're going to place your book in some Greek idyll where, utopia, where everybody just drinks milk and honey and prances around and nothing bad ever happens, then, you are going to see violation of people over and over and over again, because that, unfortunately, is what happens.
Yeah.
Ugh. Okay, let's go to BTS.
Well, I heard when you talked about how, this focus on Claire and this, strong woman trope and all this sort of stuff. I actually read something that Maria Kennedy said, and she referred to Katrina as the star of the show. Not a star, the star.
Mhm.
And then I read something else that someone also referred to, talking about how generous she is as an actress and how generous she is to the people around her and how she takes it upon herself to make sure everyone's comfortable. And partly because, and how that's just so extraordinary because she's the star of the show. And so I was like, if that's really that's the message, I guess they've been given. And I think it says a lot about Sam in terms of his respect for her, his respect for the process, and his respect for his part as well. That because that could create a lot of tension and a lot of resentment if it were handled differently or if he had a different personality.
Yeah, if he had a big ego,
Yeah.
which he doesn't.
Yeah.
No.
And
let me say something about that. It's
Yeah.
a matter of perception as well. Because I was listening to an interview. I read an interview by Alex Vlahos, who played what's his name, Alan Christie, and he was talking about how Sam was such an easy person to work with and such a great company leader.
Yeah.
And then and then I read somewhere else again where people were saying how Sam make sure that everybody's well looked after, welcomed. And then there's other people that describe them as co-leaders of the show. So it's all a matter of perspective.
Yeah.
But Katrina, as the star of the show, is what Stars has pushed from jump.
Absolutely.
And they have not let that go.
And I think also it depends on whether the actors also, sometimes it depends on when they came into the show.
Yeah.
As to what the perception they got. Especially later on when they're both producers.
Yeah. My take is that it was originally, she was depicted as the star. When it came out, everyone went nuts over Jamie.
Yeah.
Because but
Jamie he was cast first, wasn't he?
Yeah. But Jamie is the star of the books. I mean, they're both stars, but Jamie is the main character.
It's Jamie's story.
Yeah. And so I think there was a little reaction about that. And so in season 2, that's when they started. So fans went nuts and the production wanted to say, hey, no, she's the star. So that's when they started that elevate her, kind of bring him down. And I think that continued through season 4. And then starting with season 5, they started realizing like, we can have 2 of them. We can elevate both of them. That's what I've seen. So.
Yeah, but something, when I hear people say, not people, us, book readers say that it's Jamie's story. Diana might have meant it to be Jamie's story, but so much of it is Claire's voice.
I mean, it's Jamie's story as told by Claire. Yeah.
But
that's what Diana says.
But it's easy to understand why people think that it's Claire's story. Especially, because
but still, even in the
much
books,
of it is about her experiences, her surgeries, her thoughts about what's going on, and all of that. You do get Jamie's point of view, and you get inside Jamie's head, but not as much as Claire.
Well, the other though is every single person who interacts with him, it's recorded. Not everyone who interacts with her is recorded. So, like every single person and every single experience and every single timeline is all about their relationship to him. And she might be telling the story, but it's still all about relationship to him. She talks about her relationship to him as well, but there's a lot of that of information that happens when she's not even there. There's lots of stories.
Ron D. Moore basically said, it has to be, Claire has to be the star, because in a visual depiction, we can't have her being the person, telling the story and not be the star. It doesn't work in the visual medium. So I think that's where some of the confusion has come from. But I feel like they've kind of found a place now. Where they were like, it's cool, we can have 2
or
stars.
Even.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not that they came to it. I mean, they're not stupid. The Jamie character is the most popular character.
Yeah.
There's just no two ways about it.
Yeah.
Not just, and I know that Cats fans will be all up in arms, blah, blah, blah. That's just the reality. Jamie's character is the most popular. Sam is the most popular of the actors on Outlander. One, because he's Sam and because he has embodied Jamie so well. And two, because he engages with fans and has engaged with fans from the jump.
Yeah.
Some of the other people on the show, you would know that they were in Outlander. They only pop up when there's something official from the studio going on. And the rest of the time, it's like you would know that they were in a show.
Right.
Kind of thing. But Sam and also Katrina have engaged with fans and promoted the show from the jump. Do you know what I mean? So they're not stupid. They're in business to make money. And the way to make money is to keep the fans of the show happy. So we'll keep bloody watching. So
I think I think Sam's been very cognizant of that since the beginning.
Yeah.
I mean, that he basically, I'm trying to think if it was season 2, he was the press tour.
Yeah.
He went all over the world. Just him.
He was in Japan. He was in Australia.
Because he was like,
all over the place.
This is my job and I need to,
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I have a couple of things. And one is just that the first time I saw this episode was in New York Comic-Con, in the same place we all watched season 5, episode 501. Were you there, Carmen, for this one? Okay.
Yeah.
I couldn't hear. Could you hear
No.
on episode 401? And it was terrible because that was in October. And between that airing and the premiere where everyone saw it, I met John Bell for the first time. And somehow that scene came up, his scene, and I said something flippant, and I could tell that he was he really wanted to know, how did it come across? He hadn't seen it yet. Did you get like the spirit of the scene? And I felt terrible because I had said something joking about it or something. I said, I'm so sorry. Honestly, I couldn't hear anything. I don't even know what was said. I don't know. I could tell you were crying, but that's it. Anyway, and that was on his 21st birthday at Outlandish Vancouver. I think you were there, Carmen. Yeah.
Yeah.
And he had his little wolf ring that he had gotten.
Yeah. He was very proud of his wolf ring.
Yeah. But that year, for whatever reason, I couldn't hear. I noticed that Danielle Barrow, who wrote Sticks and Stones, episode 607, I just happened to, sometimes I watch the credits and just see if anything jumps out at me. She has been with this production since season 2. She started out as an historian on the show in season 2. And then she was an executive producer's assistant in the first half of season 3. And then she changed to Matt and Tony's assistant for the second half of season 3. Then she got to write an episode, and she wrote Famous Last Words in season 4. And then she became a staff writer and wrote an episode in that was Famous Last Words was season 5. And in season 6, she became a staff writer and wrote an episode. So I thought it was cool. She worked her way up through the ranks. I looked that up after I noticed that. Yeah. And she does a good job, I think. I did listen to the podcast and picked up a couple of interesting things, which was they had to reshoot that scene between Hayes and Jamie a number of times because his name is James T. Kirk. That's his actual name. And apparently his accent is so thick that they were like, Matt said, I kept hearing my mother in my head. I like the scenes, but I can't understand them. And then James Kirk was friends with Gary Young, who played Mr. Willoughby, and they used to go hiking together in South Africa. I found that out when I interviewed Gary Young. They had over 150 extras in the Wilmington scenes.
Wow.
Yeah. Gary designed that set and they built it. They found a piece of land, they bought it, and he built like 3 streets of buildings. And then they had to import the mud, the dirt to make the mud.
I love that. Importing mud.
Yep. Ed's charm is why he got the role. When he walked in and they saw how charming he was. They wanted to have Bonnet be fascinated with Claire. They said the smarter guys are drawn to her, which I thought was an interesting statement. Matt says that Jamie is the hardest character to write because he's so perfect.
You see, that pisses me off. That
Really?
pisses me off. Jamie isn't far from perfect.
Well,
No, he's in love with Jamie. That's what that means.
He was saying that in a admiring way, not like.
I'm sure he's just as in love
I'm
with him
sure
as everybody else is.
Yeah, he
I'm
is.
sure he said it in an admiring way, but it's not true. Have they read the books? Jamie is far from perfect.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
that's what makes him adorable, because he's far from perfect.
So when they were in South Africa shooting season 3, Matt's thinking ahead and they're breaking season 4, and he said to another producer, we got to have a dog for this next season. And they flew to Scotland and they bought Rollo, whose name is McDoo.
For sure.
Let's see. They filmed the river scenes in Eastern Europe. And he said, and then the visual effects superimposed the other stuff. And I thought, really? There was a statute back in the 1700s that if a slave saved their master's life, they could be set free. That's where they got the Eutropolis storyline. It was the art department that built the medicine box, they said.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you said they bought it from a company.
No, I thought that I read that they had a company in Edinburgh make it, but I'll look it back. It's in that lesson that I wrote.
You're probably right. Sometimes those producers don't know where these things come from. The art department probably hired.
I don't remember where I found out about it.
They flipped the rings. In the book, he stole Frank's ring and she swallows Jamie's, and they flipped it. And we know why later. But
I do have one that I found quite interesting, and that is that I looked at where America the Beautiful came from. And it was actually a poem that was written by a woman by the name of Kathleen Lee Bates back in 1895. And the tune was written in 1882 by a man whose name was Samuel Ward, and he was a choir and organ master at a church in Newark, New Jersey. The two never met. And it wasn't until 1910 that the two were put together. The music was actually composed for another set of lyrics, and the lyrics were actually composed for another musical score. But somebody, and I wasn't able to determine who in this article, decided to put them together in America the Beautiful. And it is one of the most favorite and popular of all the patriotic American songs. And I want to repeat that I just thought it was just a brilliant choice for the episode. And I was going to say something about in the BTS about Joe's husbands, her 3 husbands, but we already mentioned them. And each of them, they were related to each other, and they each died of some kind of a either a disease or an accident. So I again want to say that I think that if I were Duncan, I would think about twice about marrying her. Yeah, Duncan Ennis twice about marrying her, because she doesn't have a great track record.
No.
And then serial killer.
And look at Myrta.
And then Myrta, Myrta, they weren't
Although-
married. They were certainly headed possibly that way.
Yeah. Antoinette, do you have any BTS?
I don't got no BTS. I don't listen to no podcast and none of that stuff.
Okay.
I mean, I leave that to the professionals like you. I just like to sit on my couch, drink wine, watch the show, and complain.
Mhm. Oh, can I say one thing? I just realized I was looking through my notes that
Yeah.
under what I noticed.
Yeah.
Ed Spaliers is hot as hell. That's what I
Yeah, he is.
noticed.
He
He
is.
is. And his thighs, oh my gosh, he's definitely a runner.
He is
They
Yeah.
a
showed his
runner.
thigh. and
Well,
I was
his
like,
butt
whoa.
is too. His
Yeah.
gluteal muscles are really very
Well
impressive.
developed.
Well, we didn't see those in this episode, did we?
No, but we saw his thigh though.
No, yeah.
We did see his thigh, his quads.
I know we see it later.
And he's
Yeah. Ugh.
I have a
Don't
question.
remind me.
Why did they not just kill Jamie and Claire on the riverboat?
That's a good question. Ask Diana.
I don't know. Maybe, but the thing is, as much of a sociopath as he is, he probably liked the idea that this will torment Jamie.
And Claire, I mean, she
And Claire.
told him, he asked her why she wore 2 rings. And clearly she had a fondness for both of the rings. And
Mhm.
he wanted,
Yeah.
he knew that. So I think that he might have done it that's a good point.
Mhm.
It didn't suit his purposes.
No.
He killed one of them. He killed one of his one of their friends. And if you remember, he cut the one guy across his eyes. He didn't kill him. He could have killed him. He didn't.
Yeah.
So he doesn't always kill. Apparently, he likes to maim and harm.
Yeah.
And
And
terrorize.
what surprised me, given the book
Terrorize.
and given everything else, is how Claire, maybe it's because of her age, but the fact that she wasn't attacked. I mean, she was attacked, but not raped.
Mm.
And it might have been just because she was, at that point, she's probably old enough to be all their mothers. Maybe that's why.
Maybe.
Yeah,
was
she was.
looking
How
at
old
her
is she?
that
She's
low.
she's going on 50 then. At
Yeah,
that point,
she's
right?
50. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So that means
Yeah, I
they
think
would have
she's
been.
like 52.
She would have
or
been
something
older
like
than
that.
their mothers then.
Yeah.
She's
More than
50, she's
likely.
in her 50s, yes, or
Yeah.
When she comes back from the past.
47.
Let's do favorite lines.
Of course, the best one was your cock doesn't have a conscience, but you have.
That was a
To me,
great
that
line.
was a good line.
And it was great to see young Ian smile.
Mm-hmm.
Like even in all his trauma, it was like he got a little smile there. I liked some ghosts can only be banished by speaking their name and foul deeds aloud. There were actually a lot of good lines in this episode.
Yeah, there was.
Yeah.
One of my favorites was the one that Jamie says to Ian about conscience. The other one was Tryon line about there's the law and there's what is done.
Yeah.
Because we know what happens, how that threads through in later seasons and episodes.
In the book, did Claire choke back up the ring or didn't it go through?
One of them went through.
Yeah.
If I remember right, because Jamie tells her that it's not fun to. No, she chokes it back up. He give her, or she takes some kind of.
Ipecac.
I haven't read it for a while. Yeah, some kind
Yeah.
of tea or something. It makes her sick. He said he told her that he had tried it, getting it the other way, and he said that is really awful to.
That's
Doesn't he
what I'm
say that?
remembering. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think so. I
He
think
says
so.
it's really awful to try to do it that way. Don't do it that way.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's right. Yeah.
I liked Bonnet's line, have you ever felt the sea pulling at you? Now, it wasn't in the right place, but the answer is yes, she has felt the sea pulling at her, because she'd just been through the typhoon or the hurricane and it nearly killed her. Yeah.
Yeah.
Another line that I really liked is Jamie's. Most of the ones that I liked were Jamie's. Don't you see how small a thing death is between us?
Yeah.
And that is really the essence of their relationship to me, that they, that they're, he tells her, and at that time, I believe, when he uses this line in the book, he said that they had been apart, all of those years, and he was dead, but it did nothing to the love that he felt. Yeah, right. And yet he loved her all that time. So I think that's a lovely thing for us. As I think, Courtney, you said this before, a dream for some can be a nightmare for others. That's in regard to what will happen to the Native Americans.
When he's talking about nothing's lost, it's only changed. And then Claire talks about the first law of thermodynamics, which at that point, I mean, okay, that's another little thing. It was just like, oh, come on, really? I'm sure he's been like thermal, but I went, what? He was like, oh, sure, I know what that is.
Yeah.
But anyway, so that was
okay. I liked when he said, "It's not wrong to be alive, Sasana," because it's so easy, when someone dies or there's something horrible, to feel sort of survivor guilt,
survivor's remorse.
Yeah. So I really like how Jamie's, my husband's like that. Like, no, dude, we're alive. It's not bad,
I liked it when Claire said to the contrary, Lord Pensler, I'm sure the very thought of inequitable taxes brings out the savage in all of us. I thought that was funny. I actually laughed out loud about that particular line. And then Lord Pensler says, Sean, without flaw, says Lord Pensler.
Oh.
He wasn't just talking about the ruby.
The diamond.
Yeah.
He was talking about the boobies.
Yeah.
Well, then I'll go to Jamie's line. The Baron nearly dropped his eyeballs into your bosom, the filthy lech.
So Claire says, in response, when Jamie tells her about what Tryon has in mind by offering the land, that he will also have at his beck and call a trained and experienced soldier. She says, he's much more sneaky than I thought. He's practically Scottish.
That was a great line. And then Jamie's looking at
her.
And that was part of our favorite scene, right?
Yeah.
I liked young Ian. Well, I dinna ken, but she'll be saying it in Scotland, won't she?
Won't she?
Well, I actually liked what Leslie said when he said savior coin. This is a wild country and my place is at your side.
Yeah.
And I thought that was just a lovely sentiment for a friend to say to a man that he admired, who was his laird in Ardsmuir and was still his laird as far as he was concerned.
Exactly.
I like that.
Yeah.
Exactly. Him and Leslie and Hayes have come a long way, which is one of the reasons why I was still so pissed that he just let Leslie go. At least what we saw of how that turned out, I would have hoped that we'd have seen a little bit more anguish on Jamie's part. But anyway, that's just me.
Okay, I have only two more. Bees that have honey in their mouth have a sting in their tail.
Yeah.
Do you have another one?
And I do. You were thinking so loudly, I could hear you from here.
He says
Jamie
that a lot
saying
to her, doesn't he?
Yeah.
He says that over and over. And I liked it when she said, "It's not too much mutton dressed as lamb, is it?"
That's a very English expression.
Yeah. And he
Yes.
says, never. I have one more where Claire says, North Carolina will be just one of 50 states. And Jamie says, all filled with Scots.
Yes.
That was a great classic Jamie moment in my mind. Okay, let's do standouts and then our big themes. And then we're out of here.
My standout actually was Bonnet, Ed Speleers.
Okay.
And mainly because he held his own against some pretty good actors. His smarmy charm came through. It's like you hated the fact that you found him attractive, and that's exactly what you want from that character. Exactly. I'd forgotten how good he was when he first started, because he did go down the Pirates of the Caribbean road for a little while.
He did.
And then he finally came back out of it. But at that point, he was still,
Has he watched our discussion?
Well, I think it was direction, to be honest.
Yeah,
because
I'm
he's
sure.
too good of an actor to think that was. I think somebody directed him to do that.
Yeah.
I actually thought, there's always the typical people that we love, but I thought Leslie did a really good. The guy that plays Leslie did a really good job.
Keith Fleming is his name.
Yeah, Keith Fleming. That's right. He did a really good job in a fairly small part. But his intensity, his earnestness, his devotion are all right there for us to see. And in the end, when he takes that man who's assaulting Claire and bending her hand back and her head back, he takes him and bonks his head on the side of the barge, and his hair's all out. He's just infuriated, that what is happening. I just thought he did a really good job. It's a small part, but it was memorable what he did.
Yeah.
And he has a beautiful singing voice too.
I think so too.
But they don't make him sing every 5 seconds like another character.
Well, he had a difficult time holding the tune, but
he wasn't.
He kept changing the
chord,
key.
The key.
He
was accommodating all the other non-singers around him.
Yeah, could be.
I'm gonna also call out Kiki Fleming. I don't need to review, but the reasons that you mentioned, I thought he did a great job. I mean, I didn't notice him as much the first time I watched it, and this time I was like, wow, he's really good in this part.
Yeah.
So that was impressive. And then I'll just say the Wilmington set for me, or location, whatever we're calling it, location or set, is a standout.
Yeah. Overall, I don't have any standouts. I think, as I said, the things that were done well were done very, very well. I think I can't think of one performance that didn't hit the mark. I can't think of anybody in terms of the actors who didn't deliver and hit the mark on their performances. So for me, the standout would have been an extremely tight ensemble that delivered in every aspect. So the acting of the ensemble is my standout.
Nice.
The set, as always, I just am in awe of the wall colors. And I know people laugh, and that's like my thing. But really, I mean, if anyone just looks at those colors, I guess because I've built a house, I know what it is to find colors for walls. And so I see, and in my home, I mean, I'm in a room now that's kind of bare, but in my home, I have a lot of color in, they're unusual colors. I have chocolate, I have a mauve, and then what's called a Garrett gray, which is like a dark taupe. And everyone who comes in, they're always just like, I never would have put those colors together, but it's an open concept home. So I wanted to make sure the color of the walls, as you look through, would complement. And to be honest, until I started watching Outlander, I didn't even realize how much color and walls spoke to me. And it really does. And it's interesting because I mentioned that to my daughter, who was just like, Mom, you see the world in color. Everyone knows that. And I was just like, oh,
okay.
That's what she said. She's like, you see the world in music and color. That's just
cool.
you.
And
I was
it's
like,
nice that she knows you that well.
Yeah, that's cool. And John Gary Steele helped you find that.
No, really, I have never, up until Outlander, I never paid attention to sets at all.
Yeah.
Even in period pieces, I never did. And now it's completely changed how I watch TV.
That's so cool.
Yeah. Outlander has done that to me too, in terms of changing how I watch TV.
It's ruined TV for me.
Exactly. Thank you,
for me, it's
Courtney.
ruined in some ways, and it makes me appreciate other things, like watching things like what's that show, that period thing that's been out,
Bridgerton.
Downton Abbey.
Bridgerton. Yeah,
Bridgerton.
like Bridgerton, watching because of Outlander, I appreciated the costumes in Bridgerton a whole lot more. Because of Outlander, I actually appreciated the sets a whole lot more. And I started noticing things like the tiles on the floors, the decorations on the walls, and all this sort of thing. I never
Chandeliers.
paid attention.
I'd like to add that one of the reasons why the outdoor nature scenes are so beautiful that are filmed there is because the light in Scotland is different.
Yes.
Yes.
That's
It
true.
is different, and
Yeah, it's
things
gorgeous.
look. It is just stunning.
Yeah.
So I think that that helps for the external filming.
Yeah. And
So,
I don't
in other
know.
words, Scotland is a standout.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
And I don't know what it is about the lighting, but I've noticed that we get it here in like September, October. And I'll be thinking, oh, this looks like Scotland lighting. So it's got to be the angle of the sun, or
I think it's the angle of
where
the sun.
Tilt of
something.
the earth.
Yeah, tilt of the earth, angle of the sun.
I actually like Tim Downey's portrayal of Tryon. He's got that sort of smug arrogance that comes with a person of privilege, who can, holds people's lives in his hand, their fortune and their future. And I just think he plays that extraordinarily well. He really does. And he's got that kind of a pompous, not overly done, but a bit of pompous privilege and arrogance that he plays extremely well. He was a good choice. When I first heard he was going to play Tryon, I thought, no, but he's done a wonderful job.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, because you think of him as comedic, and
it's a different role
right
for him.
Did you guys ever watch my interview of him about that role?
No.
Watch it, it's good.
I'll watch him. He's really interactive on Twitter.
Yeah, he's a great
I know when
guy.
they started the Downey Ducks or something, he was so excited.
Downey
I'm like,
Ducks.
I have my own fan club.
He's a sweetheart of a guy, and he's actually a perfectionist. He's a very precise and commanding person of himself.
But he's not a method actor by any means. He doesn't come across as one of these methody types.
No, I don't think so.
No.
More instinctual but disciplined.
Probably.
Yeah.
I wanted to call out Sam, of course. I felt Jamie was in character throughout this episode, and well played by Sam. And then I'll just mention the guy who played Mr. Lillington, I thought was super strong. That whole supporting cast at that dinner was great.
Yeah.
But he in particular really, like when he was looking at the governor, like, okay, we're going to talk to him now. And, how he's shifting in his seat while he's eating and talking to Jamie, have we been correctly informed that you're the nephew of Jocasta Cameron? And I don't know, I just thought he was super good. I don't know his name.
Yeah. Outlander seems to be very good at finding actors to do these small but impactful parts.
Yeah.
I think by now it's got a reputation that people want to
totally.
They want to be part of it, even if it's just for a small part.
Miss McGregor Therese mentioned to me in a DM. She said, "I'm kind of bummed that I went for this, role that's smaller, and that I didn't wait for something bigger."
In
I said, "Well, yeah," and I said, "Well, maybe you could dye your hair
and come."
You know what?
She would.
Graham does 2 parts.
Exactly.
Why can't she?
McTavish came back, didn't he?
That's
true.
Yeah, he did. There was one scene that I thought was very well done, and that is when Jamie's putting the ruby around her neck, and the camera is filming them in the mirror, and then they're standing, and the camera's behind them. That's not easy to do. And
Because you can't see,
I
yeah.
looked real carefully
That's a
to
good
see
point.
if anybody accidentally got in that mirror, and I didn't see anybody. I thought that was well done.
Yeah. Okay, let's go to big themes.
Big themes is a repeat of another one I've had. No good deed goes unpunished.
I thought about you. Oh, wait, I
Yeah.
can't say it. She already said it. Yeah.
But yeah, that and the other is like, they all live like cats. I mean, they have like 9 lives. Like, seriously.
That's true.
Things
That's
that would have
true.
killed other people, they seem to just bounce back from. But,
Well, there could
yeah,
be
so
10
live your
books
life like a
without
cat.
that.
That's my big theme. They live their lives like cats.
I love it.
I guess mine would be the best laid plans, because you think that you've got everything planned out and you've got everything taken care of. And then there's an apex predator that comes along and just throws something in the gears and just messes everything up. And even though we don't have, most of us don't have Stephen Bonnets in our lives, we have had, I'm sure all of us have had people who have really been out to get us and has made it difficult, has made our lives difficult for us. If you live long enough, you're going to get that sooner or later. And I think that is one of the things that I took away from this. It was in the backdrop of making plans in this new land, and the freedom that they were going to enjoy, and what they had could do what they wanted, choose what they wanted to choose. And then somebody comes along and takes their fortune from them, takes the life of one of their loved ones, beats them up, takes a beloved ring, and it just shatters all of these things that they laid out so carefully, and their hopes. And I just think that actually is true to life, even though I'm not saying that we have somebody as horrible as Stephen in our lives, but there are people that we come across who would do us harm.
Yeah.
And I think that's what this for me is what this is about. For whatever reason, you don't even know often.
Yeah.
Sometimes but other times you don't know. What is it that caused this?
But what's interesting? Watching 401 kind of took away from the episode in season 6, I can't remember which one, where he sees Bonnet's balls in a jar. When you consider the fact that he killed someone he knows, he raped someone he loves, and it was just so nonchalant in the way he was like, ooh, his balls in a jar, as opposed to it being, there, you would have expected there to be a little bit more of a reaction.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was
what they showed.
I think it was meant for comedic.
Yeah, and that's my point.
Sort of relief,
yeah, that was my point, because now remembering what he actually did, I'm just like, wait, that didn't fit.
No, his balls belonged in a jar.
Yeah, they did, but my reaction would have expected him to spit on the jar rather than just
I agree.
Or throw it in the fire or something.
Yeah.
My big theme is trust your first instinct. Jamie knew that he didn't want to take him. He didn't want to, and it always gets you in trouble when you don't trust your first instinct, and it goes back to Catherine saying, when people show you who they are, believe them. It's the same thing.
Yes.
Trust
They'll
your first
tell you who they are if you listen.
But I mean, and there was
you.
hardly any exposure, but he already was, he had to be going in his mind like, this guy has heard our plans. He knows where we're going. He knows that we have jewels.
Exactly.
But he probably didn't make that connection till later, because he was hidden at the time they were talking about the jewels.
Well, no, Jamie said, how long have you been in the
and he said,
in the
wagon? And he said noon, since noon. So his first instinct was no. That's why he turned around and just started. So I don't know about you guys, but I've gotten bitten on that one. when you
Mhm.
sort of kind of like talk yourself in, well, maybe I should. And
Yeah. When you
s-
ignore that inner voice that is
exactly.
saying,
Yeah, don't do it. Don't do it. I mean,
Mhm.
because if if they had not given him a ride, would he have been able to catch them?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And it's interesting
Doubt it.
because, I have these conversations with my daughters all the time, and I was like, don't care about other people's feelings where your safety is because they said that actually that, women who get attacked in elevators is because they don't want to hurt the feelings of the person already in the elevator.
Mhm.
Because they
Yeah.
don't want that person to think that they think something badly about them, so they'll get in and
Even
so then
when,
they,
yeah,
and so
even
that
when their
often happens,
radar's
and
gone
that's
off, yeah.
My
some,
son was accosted by an older woman in an elevator. One of my sons, my youngest son. So it can happen
Really?
the other way too.
Mm.
Yes, yes, ma'am.
Wow.
And she said, you are very fine. And she said, you would be fun to be with. And I asked him what he said, and he said, I didn't say anything. I just looked at the floor. And, but she was, she was a woman I think he was 19, and she would have been about 30, late 30s, early 40s. And he, she was professional woman, and he just didn't have the confidence to tell her to back off.
Well, yeah,
But
what
it can happen to
19-year-old would,
men too.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, true.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's good to see because they're still kind and they're still helpful without putting themselves
In danger.
in danger.
Yeah.
And
You
I'm
show
so
them how to do that.
well,
Did you
yeah,
show
like
them
we
how
were
to do
driving
that,
the
Kathy?
other day, a perfect example, we were driving in DC, it was hailing. I mean, it was just like, I called it it was like monsoon type rain. It was like going sideways, and it was hail, and it was hitting the car. And we were driving along, and everyone's kind of inching along, and there was a woman hiding behind a tree because the wind was so strong she couldn't step out because the hail was hitting her face, I guess. And we were in a car, and I was like, in there, my daughter's like, we need to do something, and I was like, what? And she was like, at least give her an umbrella or something. So we pulled up alongside her, and she yelled out, she was like, here, and she opened the umbrella and handed it to her, and then she kept going. Whereas, her first instinct was we should give her a ride to wherever she needs to go.
Mhm.
And then she was
Yeah.
like, no, never mind, let's just give her an umbrella.
Smart.
And so, and as soon as she got the umbrella, she stepped out and started walking because she had something to shield her face. And
Yeah.
so, but I was thinking there was a time when she would have tried to give her a ride.
No, it's just that, a lot of people do that. They don't want to hurt people's feelings, and they ignore that inner voice that is telling them, no, something is wrong, step back,
Yeah.
but that's one of the conversations I have with my daughters too. I said, sometimes you've got to be that bitch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or people
Sometimes
getting
you
mad
have
at you
to.
because they're walking towards your car and you lock the door. And they
Yeah.
look at you like, what's wrong with you? Well, I don't know what the hell you are.
Too bad.
When I was thinking about the big theme, it took me back to the conversation Jamie and Claire had in the lovemaking scene after, when Jamie was talking about, or before, when Jamie was saying to her that not even death could part them. And it's sort of the immutability of love. Because when you love somebody, even if they're no longer physically present, that love doesn't go away. You still love them, And so that spoke to me, and that to me was a theme that not only ran through this episode, but it's a theme of Outlander in general, which is epitomized by the love story of Jamie and Claire. It endures. Love endures, and it can endure death, separation. It endures. So that's what I came away with.
Beautiful. Well, we have another one in the bag, ladies.
Yay!
But no matter when we start, it's exactly 3 hours.
I know.
You notice, you people.
And I
Remember when we
thought-
used to do this in an hour and
Yeah.
a half?
Well, and I thought,
did?
okay,
Yeah.
Did we
early
ever do it
on,
that-
The first time we
Well-
did it, it was actually not this long, was it?
no, but we didn't know each other, and I didn't know what I was
Yeah.
doing, and I didn't have a.
We did have a much simpler outline because I looked at 402 and it wasn't as, you didn't have as
In-depth.
many things for us to discuss early on.
Yeah,
So are we
Well,
really?
I
sticking
think
with
it's more
season 4?
interesting.
Yeah, it is. You know, because
Kisses
it's gonna
to
be a
you guys.
3-day trial. So
All right.
Good
I'll
luck.
know by next week.
Let us
Bye.
know.
Bye.
That's how I
And
used to
happy
lecture.
birthday again, Courtney.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Happy birthday,
Yeah, happy
girl.
birthday.
Kiss it,
Thank
kiss
you.
it.
You're
Bye.
Bye.